You punks, go on my pub!
Me and my friends in $100 Volvo, buzzing down the street while cruising on the road, getting fucked up on the 101, shooting our guns and having fun. 40 beers later and a line of speed, 8-ball blow and a half a pound of weed, headed down the tracks to Mexico, fucked on beer and staying cold. I drink deep beer, so what fuck you? I drink deep beer, so what fuck you?
Ow! Hello and welcome. I don't know what that was. Welcome to the Punks in Pubs podcast. My name is Liam Bird, and holy fuck, do I have a good episode for you today. Episode 21 is me talking to the charming man named Jason Butler, formerly of Letlive and now creating a storm with Fever Free. I know there will be a few people downloading this podcast for the first time because they want to listen to the Jason interview. So let me take a moment to explain what this podcast is about. The Punks in Pubs podcast is where I go and talk to anyone associated with punk, so not just bands or artists. So for instance, past guests have included politician Kerry McCarthy from episode 5, seems like such a long time ago now, 2000 Trees Festival creator James Scarlett from episode 16, as well as Icelandic punk museum creator Sveti from episode 7. And we talk about not just punk, of course, we do talk about punk, but not just punk, we talk about any kind of shit that pops into my head. If that's not your bag and you want to listen to just the bands and artists, I've got you hooked up, baby. Up there you will see past guests including Pat Fettick of Anti-Flag, Frank Turner, Joe Talbot of Idols, Blag from the Dwarfs, Chris Criswell from the Flatliners, plus many, many more. Go back, check them out. You might enjoy it. I hope you do. Anyway, let's talk about episode 21. I got the opportunity to sit down and chat with Jason back in August before Fever Free's fantastic set at the Heavy Music Awards in London at the Coco. So what can you expect? Well, you will hear about Jason growing up in Inglewood, California and living in poverty and gang culture, but from that came his passion for politics. We also talk about what to expect from his new band Fever Free and what he hopes to achieve. Obviously, I find out what the Free stands for. Of course, we talk punk, and I also ask him why he chose punk over his other musical love, hip-hop. Jason tells stories about life on Epitaph as well as the rise and fall of his former band Letlive, a must listen. Something I'm trying to do a lot more of on this podcast is talk about mental health and depression. Jason bravely talks publicly for the first time about a breakdown he had in Arizona. As well as that, we also talk about his stage presence and WWE wrestling again. I have no idea why wrestling keeps fucking coming up. I know I make up the questions, but it just seems to be there's always a wrestling link. As always, I hand over the end of the podcast to you after the interview, so stick around. And the band playing out the show this week hail from Mexico City, Mexico, and they're called 3 Minute Riot. So stick around for them. But before that, there's this. People of the Punks in Pubs podcast, I give you episode 21 with me and Jason Butler. Enjoy.
Our nation must once again answer a question. Is now a good time to talk about gun violence in this country? There are nearly 13,000 gun homicides a year in the U.S. On an average day, 96 Americans are killed with guns. 7 of them are children.
What's protection worth? Well, the things we're using to protect ourselves are killing others. Killing us, our people, killing our children. And you ain't affected by that? Parkland, stand up! Yes, I am from the hood. Yes, I am anti-gun. See, I stay on my boss shit, but I was not born to run. And did you really think that we was gonna let this shit go? Well, did you really think that we wasn't fit to explode? flip the script. You act like it can't be done. Got 17 bodies now. Your conscience was way a ton. But did you really think that we was gonna let this shit go? And did you really think that we wasn't fit to explode? Oh! Pull the trigger, or get shot. Pull the trigger, or get shot. Pull the trigger, or get shot. Run, motherfucker, run. Pull the trigger, or get
We are at the back of the legendary Coco, and I am sat next to a man who is a fashion designer, skater, activist, I think it's important to say as well.
Thank you.
Sorry. Frontman for Fever 333, the precious, do you say carcass or cactus? So like, how do you...
Yeah, caucus.
Carcass,
Yeah.
cool. And was formerly in Letlive. Jason Butler, how are you, man?
I'm well, man. I'm well. Thank you. What an introduction. I don't think I've ever got one of those.
Have you not?
Not like that. That was
Wow.
awesome.
I like to give a little of what I've got.
That was great.
We briefly spoke on the way up here about you played a show last night in Islington, again, another great venue. And we were saying this is the first time that your band, Fever 333, is the first time it's been to the UK. And so, I mean, how was that reception? How was it for a band that people might not know too much about, but have
Right.
come for you, essentially?
Yeah, well, that's the crazy thing, right? So when we do our demonstrations, we are the only band that plays. So it was just us. Everyone's going, who's opening? What time are this? What time is the other? And I would just keep replying on, Twitter or Instagram or whatever, like, oh, it's just us. And so what we do with these demonstrations is we try to make it as experiential as possible. In the beginning, we've got these, literal Negro spiritual hymns playing when you walk in, and some folk music, and we've got like a paper boy or girl outside passing out these papers that we made, and we've got greeters. Just truly like trying to make it feel like you're walking into like a clubhouse. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like an activist clubhouse, like a place that's kind of underground but well known enough to see another maybe 700 or so people, if that makes sense. And so last night when we played, even before we played, it was buzzing, bro. It was just buzzing, and I think that what it is for better or for worse, the idea of this project has kind of superseded us, because what I always say is like the music, obviously it's like a soundtrack to the movement, and not a movement necessarily that we champion. It's just a movement that we want to be part of. We want to be allies to this movement that's already happening. And last night, people were just so respectful, and so the community was so apparent. And I mean, in layman's terms, that shit was lit. Like, it was wild. It was just crazy. Yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk more about Fever in a sec, but you said about the movement. So can you explain to people what the movement is in your mind, how you see it?
Absolutely. I think that, my observation, and by no means am I, a societal philosopher, but I have made many observations, and I've spent a lot of time reading and studying past dynasties, empires, and societies. And what I see is a lot of these waves moving about, like decades. And it looks like we're about due for the pendulum shift of our decade. I'm like the tail end of millennial culture. So what I'm seeing is I'm observing is that okay? Or should we go somewhere else?
We can go to the back room, actually.
Yeah. I just don't want to fuck it up.
So for you people are wondering what the fuck's going on from that edit. So we've essentially moved from outside the Coco onto the balcony, looking out on Monitor Crescent, which is essentially the top end of Camden, if you keep walking down. So you might hit his bus or a horn, but it's all part of the experience. So.
Yeah, it is. It puts you in here. You're with us now.
Exactly.
Great.
It's power of audio. So we're talking about what you see as a movement.
Yeah. So essentially, man, like I said, this pendulum is shifting, right? It's swinging, and I'm noticing that people are really tired of being told something that they're not, or they're tired of being told that there is something available to them that clearly systemically is not. And also, ultimately, I think that there's an emotional awareness that I'm really happy to see right now that feeds into or actually informs our political awareness. And a lot of that emotional awareness comes with our actual mental health and stability. And we understanding that these institutions, they do hold power. It's a whole power dynamic, right? So whether these institutions be here in the UK or institutions in the US or the Middle East or Asia or Africa, both north and south, like there are are these institutions put in place, that pigeon just lands on that dude's head. That pigeon is on that guy's head. It's just
It's
standing
resting
on that guy's head.
And he's okay with it.
He's okay.
He's like, oh, there's a pigeon on my head.
I cannot, you guys, this is crazy.
Oh, he's feeding the pigeons.
Oh, okay, he's into it. Sorry, guys, you're just getting the whole visual, and that's the movement, pigeons on your head. Essentially, what the movement is to me is this youthful renaissance where I'm seeing, like I said, my generation and younger really starting to be more open about how they feel about their own, like I said, their own personal welfare, their political welfare, their societal welfare, and cultural, as well as their spiritual and their emotional and their mental health. So this movement is really just holding a mirror up to the generation before and the current status of everything that seemingly is what we feel is holding us back, really trying to open up those doors or pull back the curtain and see what's behind there so that we can make an informed effort and an informed choice on what we want to battle, what we want to reject, what we want to challenge, as opposed to just talking shit.
Yeah.
You know, because my generation a lot earlier, like we were on the tail end of Rage Against the Machine, and so we would listen to it and be like, yes, thank you for doing this for us. Yeah, I feel like that was my generation. But I feel like this generation is willing to really participate and be active in this movement and active personally. Although this whole renaissance with like technology and talking shit on your computer is not really my favorite place to do it, I think it does globalize these messages. It globalizes these truths so people can see what's happening. And even if it's just a matter of being informed, then you can take your stance just based on the information.
Yeah.
So that movement is really just pulling back that curtain and talking about it.
But do you feel like there is that, like you spoke about how you feel there's this movement now that's really looking to act. Do you think that's a part, because probably for the first time we're about roughly the same age.
Yeah.
Like, it's the first time where things really could go shit. Like, we've got a man in the White House. I mean, our government's not that much better.
Right.
Across Europe, short memory, and we're not remembering the things of our past. We've gone heavy too quick.
Right, but, I got you.
but we are at a point now where actions need to happen.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, there could be, I'm not saying there'll be another Hitler, but there could be something that is so severe.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be standing by the sidelines going, why didn't we do it?
How did we get here? Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I don't think it's too heavy. I think that that's what this whole thing, this movement I'm discussing, that's what it's about. It's about really shining a light, elucidating the truth and what's happening. And then here's the thing, is the conspiratorial element, like that people feel like these are conspiracies when in fact they're statistically proven. There's evidence, they're empirical. Like, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm not here to shift you towards my agenda, lean towards. It's not about that. Truly, it's about talking about facts and statistic. And really, we can push aside our biases to observe the truth. And that's what this is. So, with what you're saying, absolutely, because every shift and every Renaissance period we've had, romantic, political, societal, intellectual, they've been precipitated by art. But why they come about is because we get to a place where it's a boiling point. It has to be, or if it's gonna topple over, you have to fight your hardest to push it in the right direction. And that's what's happening. Things are falling apart. Whether we want to admit, and here, again, this might sound a little conspiracy theorist, but I'm not going there. I'm just saying we're so clouded by these things like technology, right? I do believe they've given us incredible advancements, especially in health and science. Like, I'm super into that. But as far as like the social equity that we seek through our phones and our computers is a bit frightening to me. And also, I don't quite understand it. Perhaps this is a generational thing, and maybe I am a little too old to understand it. But I think that we need to pay attention to how bad things are in order to make them better. That's it. It's not dark, it's not bleak, it's not dismal, it's honest. And when you're honest, you can authentically and holistically make those movements that need to be made in order to fix it. So, yeah, man, look at every empire. Look at the fall and the rise and fall. They change because things went to shit. That's what happens. That is why Hitler came into power. One of the most evil, minds, men, actions ever, that we've recorded at least.
Yeah.
This man, he garnered and acquired power through struggle, and so it's our duty as citizens that want, that have compassion and empathy and that want more for other citizens in a positive manner. It's our duty to seize that power when it's available, and it is very much available because people are tired. They're tired and they want. They don't want to give up their power. They want to, like I said, acquire more power via a group.
Yeah.
Group of solidarity.
Clearly you got a message, so how do you get that across? Because to a certain extent, you're preaching to the choir when you're in front of your own people.
Right.
So how do you get what you're trying to do to the people who are like, just play your fucking music, man. I don't want to listen to your politics.
Totally. I never back down. I never stop. That's why we show up and do demonstrations at donut shops. That's why I still, I'm still at the protests. I'm still online. Even like I said, I know that I don't quite understand the social equity, but I do understand the information age, and I do understand how to reach people like that. I do not back down, and I also open the floor and this forum that that I hope to cultivate is open for everyone, because I just had this conversation. Look, I used to play in squats to 50 punks, like the most. I used to go to hip hop shows, like political hip hop shows, to 50 hip hop heads. And if 100% of them are feeling me and we're talking the same shit, 100%, that's good. That's 50 people. But you go to a festival where there's fucking, let's say, 10,000 people, and 1% of them hear you out. That's still more. That's still 100 people.
I'm gonna say, don't make me do math.
That's still 100 people. So even 1% of that larger group that may not feel you, but if 1% do, that's 100 people. Even if you break that down to 0.75%, you know what I'm saying? That's still 75 people that are feeling you. And that to me is worth more now in my current stance and my beliefs as an activist and an artist. I believe that we need to go in all directions and meet with all people and discuss all things and try to see where they're coming from too, because I know there are people that believe, and are antithetical to my own beliefs that have, since converted. And there are many beliefs that I once had that I no longer hold because I've learned, I've traveled, I've met people, I've had experiences. And that is the thing, is I think we are fragile creatures, and a lot of us can get lost very easily. And I'm not gonna get mad at every single person that believes in something that I don't because they were lost, or just simply because I don't understand it. I used to be like that. I used to think, oh, you think this and I don't think this, and what I think is right because it's compassion for people, but at the end of the day, I don't know why you think that. So it's not really up to me to judge you and tell you why you're a piece of shit because you don't think the way I do, because that's not true. Typically, most of these people have had experiences that I've had that put them in the other direction, but we've had the same experience. So you find that common thread and you speak with whoever you can, and you don't make it so esoteric that you ostracize people. I'm not out here for that. I want to speak my truth. I want to speak truth to power, but I'm not here to tell anybody to leave. I'm asking them to come forward and speak their truth to me and have the conversation, because that's our only, to me, that's all we have left is the discussion. We've tried everything else, and I got homies in Antifa, I've got people that are extremely radical. I'm still very close to my punks, very close with the hip hop heads in politics, very close to my local government. But I think, one of the last things we have left is the discussion. And if we just have it between us, well, ain't nobody else but us hearing it. And we need more than just us to believe in it.
We are the melanin felons, we are the product of part of a policy that you gotta love. Casinos, amigos on 40 acres of. They built the shit on our backs, made in America. Living in terror while they terrorize. Cover your eyes, cause people terrified. Fuck all the promises you were promised, cuz they're cutting your oxygen till you paralyzed. Where we live is where we fall. Made in America, all for one and none for all.
let's talk about how you became the person that you are then. So you grew up in an area of California. It's been spoken about a lot. If I'm honest, I don't really know that much about Inglewood apart from it was in a hip-hop Dr. Dre song.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Yeah.
So is that a product of your environment? Is that where you got your politics from? Is it from being from there that you've seen abject poverty, but then also, you, as you said, you're fortunate enough that you get to see the other side, really?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it is. Music. And that's why I say music is God. Music art is God. It has given me a perspective that I don't know if I would have got otherwise. Like, we grew up welfare, project housing, in a very, underserved community. You know, Inglewood, California, where I'm from and where I was at the time, just off Century, over by the jet strip where Lenox and Inglewood meet. That's where I first grew up. And then we moved over to like La Cienega and Hill. For anybody listening to this that knows the demographic, the area, that's where I was. And, so a lot of gang culture, we had Queen Street, we had families, we had NHP, Neighborhood Pyru, all of these things in my face to tell me, this is what you are because, product of your environment. That environment was socially engineered. I know that now. I did not know that when I was younger. I was just angry.
Yeah.
And I wanted to change something about my own life because I was uncomfortable. I was, I felt dismal. I felt sad. I didn't know why. I went to school on permit because my mother lied about she got a friend to use their home address so I could go to a better school. And that's another thing. And I'm not trying to be, like cliche or dorky here, but knowledge truly was my biggest power. Reading, history, and the experiences I had with other cultures when I would go to school really did show me the disparity between us and the beauty of integration. So when I was going to school, I was learning all these things that I wasn't typically. The thing is, okay, here's what I got to say about Inglewood. People, you got to understand what this is like because always they go, why don't you try harder, or why don't you go do this, or why don't you get a job? You got to understand, if you don't know what it's like to not know if you're going to eat that night, if your parents are going to make rent that night, if you are going to be injured either gravely or fatally on your walk from the bus stop from school to home, you got so much in your little mind just worrying about getting home. And if that night's going to go okay in your own bed, if you have one. I slept on a mattress on a floor as a child. There's a lot filling your little mind that needs about... your mind doesn't fully really develop till about 25. So as a child, you're facing these things, this adversity. No child should really have to face that without help. So when you ask people like myself or people from other, not just Inglewood, but other underserved communities, or they don't have to be underserved, but from communities where they're not getting the resources or help or the acknowledgement mentally and emotionally that they need and intellectually, and you say to them, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? Well, it's because their mind is busy trying to just stay alive, trying to keep cool, trying to not lose the plot, trying to not fall off the edge. Like, I know that this seems like commonplace for me to say this because perhaps maybe there's a wave that's coming where we try to acknowledge mental health and we try to acknowledge emotional health in a different way now. But I'm telling you, like, I am from it. This isn't like conjecture. This is real. I experienced it. So that whole thing made me ask why. Why am I? My parents work harder than anybody I know from this side of town where they got 3 bedrooms, 2-car garage. Their parents are making 6 figures a year. My parents are making like $30,000 between the whole household, if that, to live in LA, which doesn't do shit with 2 kids. How come we are in this place, and how come every single person in my area is in the same socioeconomic standing, but once you cross about 2 miles away west from us, everybody jumps about literally 70% at least.
So what age were you when that thought came into your mind?
About 9.
9.
Yeah, I was trying to get.
That was a young age.
Yeah, I was trying to get a Snickers bar. I wanted a Milky Way, and my parents were like, "No, we can't afford to just be buying candy." And this shit was like 80 cents.
Yeah.
So I was like, what? Because my other friends from school, they came through with Twix and Snickers and fucking Sour Patch. Like, they had all the candy. And I'm like, so that's a very childish way to realize a very macro scale thing, right? Yeah, I just wanted candy. To be 100, I was like, damn. And then I remember telling myself in the car, we were driving by the Ford dealership on Centinela. I'll never forget Centinela, where it meets up with La Cienega. I was like, oh, wow. my family doesn't have that kind of money, and that's 80 cents for a candy. And it really sort of switched my mental. I switched gears and was like, well, why is that? And you're a kid, so it's hard to really take in like socio-political and socioeconomic things for more than like anything beyond face value. So I, around 10, 11, about 11, I got punk rock. And they started explaining it in a more forward way, saying like, fuck this, fuck that. I said, okay, I can get with that, and in a more juvenile way, for me at least, at the time. And it was easier for me to understand. So then 11, 12, 13, I started, really burying my nose into these books and just reading and learning about everything, everything from like Marxist theory to anarchism, to various modes of socialism, just because I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And what true democracy is versus representative democracy. Like, I just want to know, where am I and why? And like I said, I'm not telling everybody they gotta believe me when I say, hey, shit is fucked up institutionally, and it is a systemic effort to socially engineer us. Like, I'm not saying, everyone believe it. I'm just saying that's my observation. And now I'm older and I'm a little more objective and calm, and I can read and observe. I'm observing facts. These are facts. It's not my bias anymore. These are facts.
So you kind of talked about how punk kind of introduced you into a way of thinking. Who was that person who introduced you into that? Or was it something you just found?
No. I mean, like, I found, to be 100, like, my favorite, still to this day, my favorite like guitar-oriented band is Bush.
Yeah.
That's the first band for Bush, and I got a Bush, Radiohead, OK Computer, and an Oasis CD that my uncle gave me. And I was like, damn, this is sick. I like this. And I was really into like risky sports, like skateboarding, surfing, like climbing, jumping, whatever. I was a little bit bellicose, so we would fight a lot when I was a kid. So I was into all these things. And the thing that spoke to that was, like, at the time, like, especially like the stuff at home, like running the streets and getting in fights and talking shit, like, that was a gangster rap, you know what I mean? Like, that was speaking the truth to me. But then when I was like out there skating and surfing and whatever, it was punk, and they were in these skate videos, this thing called 411 Video Magazine that we had. So like they would have like hip hop and punk, and I would start hearing punk music like Circle Jerks, or like the Foundation video, or the Welcome to Hell video, so the Foundation video with Jim Greco, where they had Black Flag, Fix Me is in it. Yep. So just things like, I'm like, damn, that's sick. Like, I want to fuck with that. So I just started trying to learn about it. And then I met this dude. He was older than me, but I would skate with him and the older dudes because I was like sponsored. I was like a young sponsored skater, so I would skate with companies. And the older guys would show me Minor Threat and Black Flag and Fugazi, these things. And I'm like, whoa, this is sick. And then I got further into it when I dove deeper, and I got into like a lot of British stuff. Like, I was really into like Doom and Crass. I was this is sick. So I got really into that shit. And a lot of the ideologies to me spoke to where I was in my community and as a young person, but also just as like a young person of color who was searching for his identity. Because at the time I was like, I wasn't black enough, and I definitely wasn't white enough at the time. I looked much more like, I was darker, my hair was really curly when I was younger. So like, but I wasn't enough of either. So I was just searching, man. And I think a lot of us punks are really just trying to find a place, a place in this whole crazy world. And so, it was my buddy Paul. My buddy Paul really like showed me punk rock. He was like, yo, check this out. And it was the Minor Threat full length.
So what point did you decide to take that punk and go, I can do something with this? And why punk? Why not hip hop? We spoke about like how you love hip hop as well.
I love it, yeah.
So why did you not go for the rap route instead of going for the oi route?
To be honest, man, like I was so I had like an R&B and a rap group when I was like a kid, like 10. Well, it was like, I don't know if it was a group, but it was me and my homies. We make songs up, we'd cover songs, whatever. So I did that first, and then honestly, dude, I think it was just because of my environment, to be 100. Like, I was with one of my best friends. So my two best friends at the time when I was younger, it was a black dude and a white dude. So my shit was like totally split, because like that's my background. So my best friends were a black guy and a white guy. My black homie, Randall, we're from the same like area. We're from Inglewood. My white homie's from Westchester. It's like the LAX area. It's the nicer, more affluent area, but it's adjacent to Inglewood. So I would kick it with them, and we would skateboard, and then we'd come home, and then I really liked guitar because of my dad, so I was like trying to play guitar, and then my buddy Alex, who lived in Westchester, we got this movie SLC Punk, and we were like, damn, that's just tight, like whatever. And truly, that was like our fucking Bible for a while. And during that time, we were like, we should start a band. Oh yeah, sure, for sure. And he played drums. He got drums, and I was like, well, I mean, guitar, drums, like that wasn't really a thing in hip hop at the time, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, yeah, let's just make a punk band. So when I was about when I was 13, I started writing just like punk songs. I would just like everything from like Voodoo Glow Skulls, because they had like cool choruses and stuff, to like you know, Black Flag, or fucking Angry Samoans. Like I would try to make like these mixes, and then when I was 14, we started this band called Fubar, which is like a military term for it's fucked up beyond all recognition. Whatever, we thought it was punk, and then we were the only band in school really. We had another band that was older than us, but they had graduated from high school, so we were the band, you know. So Fubar was a band until I was about 16, and then I started, and then we started Letlive when I was 16 into 17, and then Letlive went on for 15 years. So yeah, man, it was just because of my environment. That was the thing. I had a guitar, he had drums, his brother had a guitar, but then he like bailed, so we got another bass player who also listened to punk, who was older than us. So it was just my environment, man. I mean, and I'm thankful. I'm very thankful.
And can you remember your first like punk show when you went there? Because LA has a history of being pretty fucking violent.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously never experienced it. I recently read NoFX autobiography.
Yeah.
Where he talked about fucking like stabbings and people and robbing vans and
it was
like
grimy.
Yeah.
It was definitely grimy. I came on the back end of that. You know, I was going to shows. So when I was 14. You know, it was like 1999, 2000 when I was 14. So I was kind of on the back end of that. I went to a TSOL show once at 14, and that was pretty wild just because Jack Grisham, like he's just like he provokes people to just be like the best subversive self they can be. So like there was a lot of like some fights, and like we went like he basically like encouraged us to go down to the Beverly Hills Police Department, which was like right down the street from the venue we were at, to fucking just like we wanted us to riot, but we were just like out there talking shit.
You dirty cop.
Yeah, exactly. You pig, like whatever. But we were when I was a kid, my first actual punk show I was 13. No, I was 12. I was in 8th grade. So I was 12, and I saw Anti-Flag and Less Than Jake at the Roxy.
Yeah.
When I was
legendary.
so it was like way back then when I fucking loved Underground Network, the Anti-Flag record, and Losing Streak was it's still one of my favorite records of all time. So I went and saw them, and my buddies' parents took us, and they dropped us off, and then my homie's dad got like a tattoo of a dolphin, like jumping over a moon or some shit.
Yeah.
And then they came and picked us up at the show and took us back home. But that was my first show. Yeah, my first like actual punk show, I guess, was that. And then I started going to like crush shows. Like this band DV8 was like huge to me back at home, and all that kind of stuff. Like anything local. I was super into my local scene. So we had the Abductors. We had fucking False Alliance. We had Western Waste. We had well, I guess all these bands that people wouldn't really know, but these are like the local bands that really brought me into the light as far as like you can put on your own shit and play punk shows.
So hey, in hell, does it feel when they take from us, when they steal? So play to a god on the dollar bill. Have faith in all that is not real. I can't take any more of this. I can't take any more of this. I can't take any more of this. You got to slow your roll. You walk in my shoes.
I feel we should talk a little bit about Letlive.
Yeah.
Mind. So I suppose for Letlive, you guys signed to Epitaph in 2011. How was that for a band? I mean, you've been a band, 4 years before that?
We were, at the time, 2011, we had been a band for 8 years.
8 years, okay.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
So did you feel like when people started discovering you, were you like, we've been around for fucking years? What are you talking about? Like when you get nominated for like best new band and stuff like that?
I thought it was just funny. I just thought it was funny because like I knew how long we'd been a band, you know? But to these people, understandably, like they just didn't know. And that's fine. Like we were just touring as much as we could, wherever we could, with whoever we could, and they just weren't really on people's radars. So it doesn't bother me. I get it. I get it.
So how was it like being signed by Epitaph? Because Epitaph was seen as like the punk
Absolutely,
label.
it was the label.
So
yeah.
how did that come about? Was like Brett? Did he come to one of your shows and really like it? Or
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
It was just, Brett and Sue, his assistant, came to one of our shows, and Sue came and saw us at D Piazza's in Long Beach, this like tiny like pizza place where like bands still play, I think, actually. Then Brett, she was like, you gotta come see this band. Then Brett came and saw us at the at Chain Reaction in Orange County, which is another like rite of passage for our bands to play that. You're like, you did it. So he came and saw us there, and then he called. He like came and introduced himself, told him how he felt about the music and the performance, and I was just like stunned, because that's Brett from like Bad Religion, and obviously Epitaph, but I'm like, whoa, that's you wrote American Jesus, like that's fucking crazy. He called. We had just like we had a manager at that time now. He called the manager and offered us a record deal, and we were like, honestly, it was like it was the most perfect scenario because it's all I wanted was to be on Epitaph. I mean, every skate punk band I loved, every punkorama I collected, everything I learned about Refused through punkorama. Like that, that to me was the holy grail. So we got it, and that was a huge win for us at the time, for sure.
We're gonna have a little intermission because I think you need to do a sound check, and then we'll try and pick this up.
For sure, hell yeah.
Welcome to Intermission. Intermission.
So you just done your sound check there, and we've come back inside now because supposedly there's no more sound check. So again, audio differences. You'll know about it. So we spoke about you guys when you joined Epitaph. Let's talk about the last album you did, The Devil Ensign.
Fuck, If I'm the Devil.
I've got it here. I don't know.
No worries. I couldn't even remember it. I found the Devil.
So you did a documentary with that, a little half-an-hour documentary. I watched it last night, and something that came across when you were doing it, it seems like there were a lot of tension already in the band at that point in time, and that came across in the video. And also, you were very honest in that as well. You weren't shying anything. You were talking about how it was affecting you as a person, and you were saying how it was bringing out your own vulnerabilities in the band. Are you past that now? Do you feel like you're in a better headspace now than you were?
Absolutely.
And was that the point of why Letlive kind of fell apart? Well, not fell apart, but ended up breaking up.
Yeah, it was a large part of it. Absolutely. And one thing that I'd been working on for a couple years prior to that documentary was just shedding myself of any ego and being as honest with myself and others as I could.
Do you think you were being egotistical then?
No, I mean, I think that essentially any sense of self-preservation or those methods, like they require a quite literal sense of ego, like the frontal lobe.
Yeah.
Ego. At the time, no. I feel like I'd worked quite hard, like I said, for the past like 3 years or so prior to really just to diminish that idea and really put because the whole thing for me in Letlive from the beginning, for the most part, it was never really supposed to be about me.
Yeah.
And with various things like with media and publications and what have you. If you stand in front and you hold a microphone, both literal and proverbial spotlight will be shined on you. And I understand that, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not afraid of it by any means or threatened. It just wasn't necessarily the reason I started that band.
Yeah.
For that. And I think that when I realized that the best way to handle that was to make sure I never believed in the hype. Don't believe in your own hype ever.
But it must be difficult though, especially because you had a very, like we said earlier on, how you were the oldest, newest band going, but then all of a sudden that rise was rapid.
Yeah.
So trying to keep your feet on the ground must have been quite hard.
Yeah, honestly, the thing is, and that's a big reason why at the end I became frustrated with myself in Letlive, was because it wasn't. That was the thing, is it wasn't difficult for me, but trying to explain that to everyone around me, especially my band members. I mean, like, guys, honestly, like, I'm not asking people for more. I'm not asking you for more because of me. I'm asking you for more because of your potential as an artist and the potential of this art specifically. We can do more. We can go further. We can challenge ourselves. We can scare ourselves. We can do this on our own, which is what I've done with this current project, the Fever 333, is I was asking a lot of people, and when you do that, you have to understand that perhaps your vision or views are not going to be shared by everyone. And I began to understand that and thought that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to continue trying to impart those upon other people, which is why I left. I just didn't want to keep asking them to do things that they thought were crazy.
Like what? Like
So with the Fever 333, with our demonstrations, which is what we call our performances, with our demonstrations, we play by ourselves, and that's it. And if I want to, if there's something that I have in my head, like this last music video that I was lucky enough to direct that we just released yesterday, if I want to say something in a video, like, I don't really want to have various other powers that be telling me that I can't for this, that, or the other, because it's my truth. This is what I believe to be the truth. And again, I'm not asking anyone to reject anything. I'm just asking them to challenge. That's what I always ask. And so things like that. And also artistically, I wanted to be afraid when I wanted to be like unsure of what I was releasing in the way that I don't know how it's going to be received, because it's, I love like eclectic and eccentric art, especially in an art that seems so sterile and homogenized, like rock music in general.
Yeah.
I feel like the most punk rock shit right now are these fucking kids in their basement making like crazy dissonant hip hop music. Like, that's punk. That's like sonically punk rock to me. And so my efforts to employ these ideas and these sonic attributes to the music with Letlive was definitely, I guess, confronting, but also like a little frightening and unnerving.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of the guys, and I'm not saying that they should have felt any other way. You know what I'm saying? Like, that they are totally entitled to feel that way. And if that's how they feel, they should have expressed that to me, and they did. And I understand that. And it was hard for me to accept in the beginning, but then I respected it. And what happened was we wrote this record, If I'm the Devil, and then we were kind of confused as to like what's next. And in my mind, it was like, we have to go further, even further out, and even more uncomfortable as artists. And that, they didn't want that, and that's absolutely, from what I gathered, that's not what they wanted. And you shouldn't ever impose all of what you want upon 4 other people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that everyone else in the group felt this way. I'm just saying that those feelings were existing within the group, and that is why, ultimately I felt like it was time for me to remove myself from the project and also leave it where it was, and how the feelings that they had about Letlive, and myself included, I wanted to leave there, because I felt if we continued to push in a way that was so friction based with us internally, that it would turn into something that I never wanted. So I wanted to leave it there. That's why we didn't do a farewell tour or anything like that. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody, because they had given me so much personally. My growth really has a lot to do with the people that invested in Letlive.
Your name, yes, I wear that crown. Every last that thing
gets thrown at you a lot, and you get this question all the time, and that's your energy on stage and bouncing around and stuff like that. When you're in Europe, do you feel I can do this a lot more because of free healthcare? Like you like, shit, okay, I see that, I can have a go at that now.
No, I've never thought about that. But you're right though. I've had a couple injuries while here, and I've been taken over to the the NHS, and they've hooked me up. Like one time in Ireland, I got super fucked up. My knee was fucked. It was like swollen, and there was like fluids. It was like really bad. I couldn't walk, and I had to play a show, which I played, and then afterwards went to them, and they hooked me up for free, which was just insane, but beautiful. And I've gotten in some injuries here and been taken to the hospital, but I've never thought about it. No, I guess I don't really think about much other than what's in front of me in those moments. And usually what's in front of me are some people that are like-minded or curious.
Yeah.
And that to me is the most exciting. So it's probably why I'm out there just wilding out.
So when you come into a venue like this, where it is tiered, are you not like pinpointing going, I can make it there, and I can go to
because
there?
I think I would fuck it up. Like if I thought about it if I thought about beforehand, I would be like, I'd build it up too much, and I'd be like, oh, I gotta do this. So I'm better off just like being spontaneous and just seeing it in that moment, getting that kind of focus.
Well, talking about guys who kind of injure themselves, I saw you tweet about a wrestling thing, and you spoke about how when you were younger, you used to do wrestling moves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So wrestling's kind weirdly, unintentionally, become a part of this podcast. So I was talking to Jarrett Dale of Red City Radio, and he's a huge wrestling fan. So we spoke a little bit about wrestling. And the question I asked him, I'm going to ask you the same thing. What was your favorite entrance music for a wrestler that you used to like when you were a kid?
I was probably just Undertaker.
He said exactly the
Oh,
same
really?
thing. Yeah,
Really? Yeah, like my favorite wrestler was Ultimate Warrior, even though he was like kind of like one of the more fake guys, like at the end of the day when you like whatever. But I loved him because he was like, my family on my dad's side's indigenous, like Native American, and I was like, yeah, he speaks to me, even though he's like some tanned white dude with like funny fucking feathery hair with weird makeup. But I loved him. But the entrance music, absolutely. Are you kidding me? Like even like if you're here tonight, if you see our show, our demonstration, excuse me, if you see that, the lights will go down. Everything will stop. And you know how he used to come, when he would come in, it was like, they'd be talking, every man would be talking, so now we've got, and they'd be all, gring, and he'd be like, oh no. Because, he'd come in during other people's matches sometimes. Yeah. So he always had a presence no matter what. Whereas other people, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, whatever, Diesel, like, they would like just run in, but there wouldn't be like music.
Yeah.
But every time The Undertaker came through, he had like this entrance that was so grim and ominous and captivating. Yeah, it was unmistakable. So yeah, for sure, Undertaker.
Quickly sideswiping to another side.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your voice because you have the ability to be able to go from quite the soulful singing. I'm guessing that kind of came from your dad and stuff like that, to the more aggressive. I mean, when you were doing your sound check, you started doing a bit of pig squealing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, do you keep your voice in check? And if you do, how do you do it? Because it's something that I feel is so underestimated, the power of your voice and how much you use it all the time. I mean, stuff like this.
Yeah.
You're using your voice now and you've got a show later.
Yeah.
So is this something you worry about?
Nah. I've just always been a loud kid. Like I was always loud, I was always yelling and shit. So I don't really think about it. I went to the voice doctor for the first time in my life.
The voice doctor is just one guy.
The guy. I went to the one at like USC Medical or whatever. At home for the first time because I was like just tired because we've been touring so much, and I was like, damn. And I just recently had a kid, so like I'm like staying up. Thank you so much. I'm staying up a lot to like make sure I could talk to him, or getting up early so I could talk to him on the phone, or so it's a little my regimen's a little different on tour. So I was a little fatigued, and I was like, oh, I should probably check that out, because I've heard about all these stories about people being like, I got these nodules or these crazy like calluses on their vocal folds. And I was like, shit, I should check that out. But yeah, she looked, and we did the whole thing, camera and different tests, and she was like, no, they actually look great. And if anything, you just have like some fatigue, like you're tired. So honestly, my only advice really is to people is like stay hydrated and to sleep. Like sleep is huge. Sleep for anything. Your mental. This is okay. I'll talk about sidebar. I've recently looked at a study done by British doctors, actually, on mental health, talking about how sleep can do more for you. Okay, let's talk about this real quick. 51-point scale, Hamilton scale. It's what they so 0 being like acute suicidal depression, 51 being like euphoria, ecstasy, like quite literally on pills. And most of the pharmaceutical, I think some of the strongest, if I'm not mistaken, some of the strongest pharmaceutical uses for what they call chemical imbalance for depression will move you about 1.8 towards euphoria, 1.8 points if you in early regulation. And sleep can actually, when done consistently with the proper duration and just like the proper type of sleep, can move you 6 points.
Yeah.
So sleep is magic.
Recently, I spoke about depression because it's something that I have and still deal with now. And something that when you call a helpline like the Samaritans, they ask you about your sleep patterns. And if you are sleeping and if you're not, you need to like, they'll recommend some like herbal stuff on how to sleep and stuff like that. So is that something that you've suffered from at all? Is like, because it must be hard when you're on the road constantly, and you said about Letlive, you were feeling quite vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, was it something that's ever affected you, or you've been quite lucky whereabouts you've always been like bounced back quite quickly?
You know, for most of my life, honestly, I was everything was okay. I was able to find a perspective that helped me. I was also very, very, very invested in sports. I was very invested in music. So like I basically, I don't know if this is really dealing with it, but I had other things to keep my mind occupied because it's very active, my mind. But I will, I've never said this publicly, but in 2016 when we were on that If I'm the Devil headline tour in the US, I had a straight up breakdown in Arizona. I was crying. I didn't understand why. I had shingles. I had my dog with me. I was just in a really bad way. And I think for the first time in my life, I'd really experienced what it was like to be taken by something that was out of my control. I've never drank or smoked or taken drugs or anything. And so I've always tried to be in control of my mind and my feelings. But that day, and from that moment on, everything changed. And I realized that, which I've never not believed, but I'm just saying I had my own personal experience, that the idea of depression is not something that we choose. We don't choose to feel bad. You know what I'm saying? We don't. And when people say, you just gotta look at it different. Like, I'm sorry, brother or sister. Like, that's not what this is, and that's not what I felt. I was, and I don't really battle with anxiety either, but I was shaking, I was crying, I was like talking to my dog, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was tripping. I was in this. It couldn't have been any worse too. If anyone has ever been to any bands and listened to this, particularly if you've been to the Nile in Arizona, it's in Mesa, and it's basically like a Dungeness downstairs basement. It smells of mold. It's weird temperature. It looks like shit. It's dark. There's one light. It's terrible. So I was in this room with my dog, and I'm just thinking about everything. I'm probably thinking about a lot of things we were talking about, like on that interview, the documentary for If I'm the Devil. And I just felt it, and I had shingles, and I was like, I shouldn't be out here. I feel like I'm out here because I feel pressured. I feel like I'm out here because I have to be. I feel like if I don't do this, I'm gonna let people down. All these things, all these pressures that I'd never really really grappled with before, hit me super hard. And I just lost it, man. I lost it. I was calling my wife. I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. I can't stop crying. I can't stop shaking. And she's amazing. She's so beautiful. She tried everything she could. She like bought me a hotel. Everything, I'll get you. She like bought me a massage, which I didn't go to because I was so uncomfortable. Like all these things, you know what I mean? Like she was trying on the phone, but we were so far away. And that's another thing too. Like when people talk about like, oh, we tried our hardest, this, that, and the other. Sometimes we just gotta feel that pain. Sometimes we gotta feel it to try to understand it, and that's what I needed. So I spent a lot of that time just crying and just be feeling fucked up. And then it was after our show, and Yeah, man. I don't know. It was a really interesting moment for me because I speak a lot about emotional navigation through Letlive a lot because I had to do it a lot. I had a lot of experiences that were fucking crazy. But with this thing, I really got my first sort of introduction to what it felt like. And when people would discuss this with me, and when people do discuss this with me, maybe not as frequently, but I get it now. I understand it, and I have even more understanding of the situation than I had before. So yeah, that's when I started to deal with that. And now because of that, that's why I made a lot of the choices I made. It's crazy. I like that that you and I are the ones talking about this. This is the first time I've talked about this really. That's why I made the choice. Because at the end of the day, like if I'm like crying in a basement, talking to my dog, and I don't know how to control it, I gotta figure something out.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of it was the pressures I was feeling at the time, as who I was in and for Letlive.
Let's talk about the 333.
Yeah.
I understand that those 333 actually have a meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to explain what those meanings are and why those meanings are so important to you as a band who are trying to really push your message and what you're trying to do as a band that we spoke about at the beginning of the podcast?
Absolutely. C is the third letter of the alphabet. So the threes in our title represent the letter C, and the three C's, and they are the foundation upon which this whole project sits. And they stand for community, charity, and change. And that really informs this project. I believe that first things first, for any sort of change we want to make, any sort of true understanding of ourselves and our environment, it starts with community, right? You want to make a change, whether that be local or global. It starts locally. It starts within your community. Yeah. Having a respect for your community is also having a respect for yourself. You know, if you're gonna throw trash around your fucking outside your house, then your house is gonna look like shit. You know what I mean? Like, but if you pick up the trash that you've thrown out or people have happened to drop, and it's because you have a certain affinity for that area, and that's your community. And that's I guess like a shitty metaphor for what I'm trying to say here is this caring about people and caring about what we do with and around them. And when we play in this project, we make sure that we're thankful and we understand the privilege that community has given us to play in that, whether it be that venue or that type of community, whether it be punk, hip hop, folk, polka, whoever that has allowed us to play, give us the opportunity and the privilege to play, put on these demonstrations in that community. The charity is a fully contingent piece of what we do. Every demonstration we have, we take $3.33 from each ticket sale, and we donate to a local charity. So that's every time, and that's why our tickets are $13.33. Is because that $3.33 we take from every. So last night we made like hella money. You know what I'm saying? Like we made like almost probably 2,500 pounds.
Yeah.
Just in ticket sales.
And what's the charity you were using last night?
So what we do is we come to the area and we basically ask people what are the charities you find most in need, and what are they doing and why they're doing it. So right now I've just basically put out a blast to a bunch of people I know around here that have given me. And currently there's a shelter for like wayward youth, and that's the one thing I've been really with recently is just like wayward youth and homelessness with children, with youth, and that's one that we've been looking at my friend was working with kids just outside of London.
Yeah.
So that's probably what we'll end up giving that money to for this one. And then the change, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. You know what I mean? Like, it's just trying to make a positive, affect change in a positive way, or whatever we think is positive, and then open that discussion for others to make the change within themselves, again, to affect their environment. And understanding that, like, you can be who you want to be in this setting, you know, that we create with these demonstrations, or you can be who it is you want to be. You know, maybe you're not allowed to be that person in other scenarios, but in this one you can be whoever it is, and that's part of the change.
Well, Milk Teeth look like they're about to do a sound check, so I think we're going to have to wrap this up.
Okay.
But, mate, like, I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, brother.
I could have done this for hours, if
Same.
I'm honest. So next time you're in the UK, let's have another
Let's
chat.
go. Yeah, we'll just fucking go kick it.
Triple clear code, candy up a red ship. She grins when the C10 bed dips. Tattoos, a paragraph in my life's book. Needle nose, ink drips, no lead tip. Graffiti artists in the streets, let the paint speak. I graffiti beats, I graffiti war peace. Love above, the middle, the level, and beneath. Black collar shirt, boots, American priest. Teeth covered up in gold. Kill them all dead, shovel up them holes. Dry dead wood covered up them coals. That's a hot flame, bubble up them souls. What the hell is hell? Heaven ain't a place I can be myself ever since 7 I chose. I'll be the dice, I'll be the 7, my life rolls. Roll. There's a fire that's burning in front of me. Yeah, I'm the one that started it. Can't you see? And there's a countdown to your eternity. It's 3, 2, 1. It's time to make changes. Okay, we gotta make some big change. Only comes with the first stone. It's time to make changes. Okay, we gotta make no the change only comes with the first stone.
Yeah.
And we're back. Thank you so much to Jason for giving me so much time. And you heard him. Next time he's back in London, we will kick it for part 2. Also, thank you to the guys from Heavy Music Awards for giving me the space to conduct the interview, and I hope to be talking to them very soon on a future podcast. Thank you to Steve Burke, as always, for making me sound amazing, for his audio support. And lastly, thank you to you, the listeners. Please go rate and review whatever podcast streaming service you use. Follow the podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Punks and Pubs. Lastly, the power of word of mouth helps this podcast grow. So tell your friends and family to listen if punk is their thing. If they enjoy a good chat, then this is definitely their thing. If you live in a rural area, why not forward the podcast to your mate via WhatsApp? No excuses. Right, that's a sell over. Time for some punk rock. Playing out the show this week is a bunch of dudes coming at you from Mexico City. They're called 3 Minute Riot. If you dig what you hear, you can hear a link to them via the Punks and Pubs social. This track is called Memphis. That's it from me. If you're going to a punk show, don't forget that if you see someone fall down, you pick them right back up. See you in a couple of weeks. I love you. Bye-bye.